Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night once again. So this is going to be my quick little review. Spoilers, the further we go along, you've been warned, for The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. Which I have to say, um, I didn't know really what to think going into it. I mean, again, like a good horror, suspense, movie or show or whatnot. But it looked very interesting from the trailers and whatnot. So I was like, I'll give it a try. And then, I heard some early, like I said, buzz from, people who had got, online, reviewers who had seen the first couple episodes or like as soon as it dropped, started watching it and, absolutely loved it. So I was like, okay, gonna have to watch this definitely. And, I started watching it, um, it's when it dropped. And, yeah, this last Friday. I'm trying to think if it was this last Friday or the Friday before. Watching a couple episodes here or there, and I just finished earlier today. And I have to say, this show is done really good and has um, such a great sense of dread and suspense through a lot of it, where you're like, okay, wait, what now? Like many shows, I'll say, the first episode or two is kind of hard to make out what it is or if it is something that really captures you. I mean, others might say it grabbed them right from the beginning, but I mean, there was something that didn't like grab hold of me right from that first episode, but still intrigued me. And then, of course, as you watch more, it's just like, okay, I got it. Want to watch the next one. Want to watch the next one. Watch the next one. Which is the joy of binging in general. And like I said, the good shows Netflix has done or Hulu, good streaming shows. That is, the hallmark of it. When you have been hooked in and you want to watch more and more of it. So, anyways, the story for I mean, it's based on a book, which of course things have been changed around. I forgot what year it was. I looked it up a minute ago, but oh well. Is you have a family, the Cranes, that I guess the parents, they try to flip houses and whatnot. I can't tell whether Hill House is their first property or they've done this for a couple others, but I guess this is their golden goose, or hope to be their golden goose. And obviously, you see the picture up there. Creepy house, as the title says, which is of course haunted. You see just strange things happen uh, from time to time, and again, you're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, what's real, what's in which we'll go into more in a moment. But I have to just say it was done very well, and a large part of that is, of course, due to the cast. Which you have, and I think it juggles it really well because you have a large cast. Because I mean, the family is seven people, the main characters, and then you have as like supporting cast. You have your supporting cast of characters throughout the show, but the other two besides the main seven of the family, five kids, their parents, and a couple called the Dudleys, who are the caretakers, who have you know who used to work for the Hill family, who previously owned the house. Um, so you have seven people, like I said, five children, and of course, from those five children, you have it. The show goes back and forth through time, which at first is a little jarring, but the way it's done, as you look at it overall, I think is really excellent. But you have the five kids. Let me see if I just watched the last episode earlier, so let me see if I can remember them from oldest to youngest. So, of course, you have Stephen, Shirley, Theodora, um, and then you have the twins, Nellie and Luke. So you have those five as children, but then you also have them as adults. So there's a lot of flashback, flash forward type thing through this, and of course you have the parents, um, which I have to look on the IMDb. Of course, the mother, who well, you have the mother, the actress who plays her, and then you have the father, which I'm not sure if I think they had two different actors or whether that was just some good makeup for the older father. As we're talking, like this is like totally professional or anything. Let me IMDb it quickly. And I've been looking at it, so of course it comes right up. Okay, yeah, so two different, young Hugh and older Hugh. That's what I thought. It had to be two different actors. Um, but sometimes they do the makeup thing and everything. Anyways, all right. So within that, that's the five kids, older, and the father, younger and older version. 12 actors right there, plus the mother, and then you have, like I said, supporting characters all throughout. A good sized cast, and I think they give some flesh to meaning to each of the characters, even though obviously with any big thing, this is always something to be that's discussed when you talk about movies like The Avengers, um, or certain things that have a good ensemble cast. Uh, how do you give them all good screen time, make sure their stories are told or whatever? And I think for each of them, what we learn about uh, each of the Cranes, it's pretty fleshed out for, I mean, this series of, what is it, 10 episodes. Yeah, I mean, a nice tight 10 episodes. Not too long, not too short. Um, so anyways, all right, so storyline, the Cranes move in, um, as a family, their summer project to flip this house. Of course, this haunted house shenanigans start to occur as we do this. And I'm thinking about this. This might have been one of those shows where I could have actually, people who do reviews for every episode, I'm like, I don't know if I could be able to do that. But this is the type of show that actually, if I had thought to try it, it probably would have been served a heck of a lot more than a whole, series overview. But it is what it is. Anyways, so so I could go through different things play by play. But we have different things you see. One of, I guess you could say, the main character, if you will, through the family or characters would be, more or less the mother Olivia and the youngest daughter of the twins, Eleanor, Nell. And we see repeatedly Nell talking about this bent bent neck lady, a woman, standing there, looks like like she's been hanged. And that it kind of plays through it, as that's her major thing. And then her brother Luke, there's this little girl Abigail that he sees and talks to and everything every now and then, but no one ever seems to believe him because no one else has ever seen Abigail. So there's a question, of course. Okay, is she real? Is she a ghost or whatnot? You see, the mother has issues which you're not sure. Of course, is it mental illness or is it, as you come to find out more through this, that apparently the the family and themselves, especially the mother and the children, are sensitives, like as in like psychically sensitive, attuned, where the mother even says, Olivia says at certain times could see, even when she was younger, she could see people who weren't there. So you learn that's part of this family's history, even though it's never really talked about. Um, like you say, you see Nell sees mainly the bent neck lady, um, the the Shirley, the oldest daughter. You don't see much where she seems to see or believe much as a kid, but Theodora, the third child, she seems to have crap. I thought of it yesterday, and my brain's already seemed to have a power, if you will, of I think it's like called psychometry or something like that. Whereas if you touch when you touch an object or person, you you can see its history or things that have happened around it, something along those lines, where when she touches certain things or people, she can sense what's happened with them. And you see little hints of that as she's a kid. And like I said, it flashes back and forward of you know at, in their adult lives. I mean, and you see that Stevens become a writer who actually wrote a book on Hill House and embellished a few things, and of course, much of his family is, well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, anyways, chronologically speaking, and like I said, this show goes back and forth, and you figure things out as you go. So, chronologically speaking, there's the hauntings, these things going on. You wonder if Liv, the mother, is losing her mind. At first, well, something happens where you see the father, Hugh, takes the kids in the middle of the night, throws them in the car, takes them away to a hotel without the kids are crying for mommy, like, what's going on with mommy? And where are we going to leave her here and everything? She's like, well, we'll come back for mommy and whatnot. Brings them to a hotel, goes back, and we don't learn what actually happens until later in the show. But in essence, then the show, flashes to them as adults, and like so, we see Steven's a writer, wrote a book about it, but he doesn't really believe in it. Even though we kind of get hints that, I mean, he, like with the other kids seeing these things and everything, he had to see something, he had to know something, but he gives no credit to it. He thinks, if anything, it's more mental illness than anything. Um, and again, you see Shirley, she owns a funeral home. Her and her husband own and live in a funeral home. So I guess from when her mother's funeral, from that they show a scene later, her whole struggle with that, and after that, I guess she became obsessed, for lack of a better word, or her role is to fix those that have died, that are broken, or whatever, to make them look whole again, I guess. Again, you see, mm, sorry, Theo, who has become a psychiatrist, psychologist, Dr. Theodore Crane, and works with children. Um, and you see, like, again, through the show, like, she ends up catching a foster father who has abused a girl in his care and whatnot. Then you see the twins, Ellie, who, like I said, other than the mother, is probably the one that you see most weaving through the threads, because, and again, spoiler, this as the story goes, we find out um Nell has killed herself. Well, supposedly killed herself. I mean, she's had problems. Again, she's been seeing the big bent neck lady again. Um, and there are just so many problems, which even her siblings kind of dismiss and whatnot. And, she goes back to Hill House, and they think she's committed suicide. But of course, and, then the father, who apparently has been distant from his children all these years, comes back into the picture, and things start to be slowly but surely. We see through the flashbacks and forwards, from his point of view, become more fleshed out in the sense of, excuse me, um, in the sense of letting them know more what's been going on. Like that during those years impending between childhood and adulthood, Nell, um, who was having problems sleeping, which was identified as sleep paralysis, which is a terrifying thing. I've been there. Um, Thankfully, not like as common as a lot of people might have. But anyways, um, Nell, she actually goes to a sleep study, and the sleep technician, she ends up dating and falling in love with and getting married to this guy. And then we see that the bent neck lady returns, and her husband dies. Of course, medically speaking, it seems like it's an aneurysm, but she knows it's due to that. And then, like I said, she becomes more and more unstable, for lack of a better words. As I said, goes back to the house because I guess that's what she feels she has to do. And she to the rest of her family, she's like her mother has killed herself. And it's just Luke, who has been unfortunately an addict throughout his life, and hence has alienated himself from his family. He has to deal with that, and they have to basically, it's the inciting incident which brings the remaining children and their father back together. And through the as they prepare for Nell's funeral and whatnot, again, we see how events truly played out, and then each of them really realizing the horror, if you will, of the haunting. I mean, different events coming, seeing the ghost, the ghouls, hearing things knocking, and then we flash back to the things during their childhood. And like I said, the way it all comes together near the end, it's really, I think marvelous and masterful in the sense that, we get many of those questions answered, but we get some other questions. Like, for instance, we learn a little bit about the Hill family. Poppy Hill, who was apparently insane, like certifiably insane. Her husband, who bricked himself in a wall. And that's one thing I was kind of confused on. There was, you see the twins messing with this dumbwaiter, and there's like a little speaker that goes up to a room where there's like, an elderly grandmother figure that died there, um, and has been addressed as Mrs. Hill. And I was thinking that was Poppy for a long time, but I guess was maybe the original Mrs. Hill, and then her son that was committed to. It got kind of confusing. I have to go through it again. I think it was on Mrs. Hill and uh, Poppy and Mr. Hill. They met in an asylum, which what is said. So, but the older woman, I guess that was his elderly mother. There are so many little things, and we see, um, Poppy talks about to the mother, the spirit of Poppy Hill, talks to Olivia at one point about, preys on her fears of losing her children, this and that, and describes, um, I believe, a daughter that she didn't have, a son that lost the use of his legs, because at one point, just one scene, we see uh, a boy in a wheelchair, like an of course, like, old fashioned, big, bulky wheelchair, wheeling his way out. So, and a few times through the series, especially near the end, we see all these ghostly figures. Again, there's Poppy. I guess it's Mr. Hill, this tall, very, very tall man, uh, who haunts Luke mainly, as the bent neck lady haunts Nellie. There's this very tall guy with a like bowler hat type thing that's haunted Luke, as a kid and as an adult. And I guess that was Mr. Hill that uh, bricked himself up. um, but yeah, we see, and then like in the final episodes, we see all these different people spirits in there. So that opens it up to, kind of like wanting to know more and more the history of this house. Um, and which I think could, if they just were to decide to do a second season, which it kind of closes itself, but at the same time it's left open, I think would be interesting, more the background of it. But anyways, so um, we finally come to a point where Luke, through all these things, they're seeing this happening and everything, um, decides to go back to the evil that is the Hill House and burn it down. And of course, as the house is kind of described as being hungry, an organism, and they're like the meal, the family is the meal that never finished since Hugh the father took them out. That's kind of like, the walking into the proverbial lion's den. Luke goes, then his family chases after them. They're they're trapped, and then, like I said, the true story behind all things of the mother's insanity, I guess, being driven mad by Poppy Hill, by these spirits and everything. The little girl Abigail that Luke always saw as a child is revealed as being a real girl that his mother killed, in her, I hate to use the word psychosis, but in being driven crazy by this house. Um, and Abigail, who actually turns out to be the caretaker's daughter. Um, but we see that, and then, like I said, Olivia being pushed, almost literally by Poppy Hill, if you will, to kill herself, and we see the entire um, story unfold, and it's like I said, it's kind of weird and drawing, but it's very captivating and entertaining. And like I said, when all said and done, that of course the showrunners, the directors of the episodes are credit, but it comes down to its stars, as we see here, the kids and themselves, for the characters Shirley, Theodora, um, Luke, Stephen, little Nell there, along with her parents on the sides. They did a great job. You know what? I've heard one of the oldest jokes in Hollywood is never work with children or animals. But you look at things like Stranger Things and this, where so many movies and shows that you have these brilliant young actors and actresses that give such wonderful performances. And then you have the adult children, um, again, from my left to right, uh, Theodora, Stephen, Nell, Luke, and Shirley, and their performances. Which Shirley, I knew I recognized her when I saw her. I was like, what do I recognize her? She's the actress that plays Esme in the Twilight franchise. um, but they also give such great performances, of course, as adult actresses, in contrast to their younger selves. They are very believable. You seeing the switch between the two, and then there are certain scenes where you see the adults acting with the children. Like I said, seriously, it's like time flopping all over the place, and it's an interesting mechanic of storytelling, but it works so freaking well. And yeah, I really enjoyed the series. So if you like horror type, like a good little scare, horror suspense, I would definitely recommend The Haunting of Hill House to you. And as I was saying, so at the end, after a confrontation with the house, we'll put it that way, at the end, um, all the children are trapped, and the father basically makes a deal with the mother, who can open the one thing I forgot to mention, I guess, is like, there's, in all the house, of course, there's this one room called the Red Room, because of a bright red door that's, well, not bright red, but a, not blood dark colored, but a red, like apple red colored door that was always locked and no one could ever get into, which we learn later. Apparently, they've all been into it at one point or another, which kind of was like, in Harry Potter terms, a room of requirement. It became different things uh, for little the for I think it was Shirley or Theodora. For Theodora, it was like a little dance room studio. For Shirley, it was like a family room, library full of books. Um, for Luke, it was a tree house. Um, for Nell, it was a playroom. And this room, which they then liken to the heart or stomach of the house, all the adult children are trapped in there. And then I guess it's where they all truly acknowledge things, as Nell, of course, dead, reappears to them and speaks to them and whatnot. And, the father who's on the outside makes a promise and deal to the mother. If she'll let the kids out and let them go, which he doesn't want to do, then he promises he will be there forever. And at first, I mean, I was like, okay, is he planning on killing himself or whatever? You see him and Steven take Luke out because Luke has been positioned by the house to inject himself with something and almost died. And, he and Steven look at something for a moment and then, see them getting in the car, taking off. Then Steven and Hugh go back into the house as, Steven asks, "What did I see?" Really finally realizing that this is all real. Um, that his siblings, who have been fully aware of this and have acknowledged it to some extent or another, through their lives, or the fear of it through their lives, he finally sees all what actually happened the night his mother died and they were taken away and whatnot. And and then he sees his father like kind of there in the corner. So I guess the one he's finally talking to is the spirit of his father. Um, and it says the house is yours, and going from there. And we know that the Crane parents are there. That at the very end, the Dudleys, who are obviously much older, at the end of this show, than we see them in a couple of flashbacks. Who the Mrs. Dudley's played by Annabeth Gish from the X Files. Those of you who watch the X Files would know her, Monica Reyes. Um, and then I guess she goes to die there because her daughter is in that house, or Abigail, who Mrs. Crane killed unintentionally. Intentionally, unintentionally. It's hard to be sure when you're talking about being driven crazy. Um, and she goes to die there, and I guess presumably Mr. Dudley is going to follow suit. But that opens the door to all those spirits being there, more happening. And if Steven owns the house, which as Luke wanted to burn it down, and as Hugh wanted to initially when his wife died, but the Dudleys asked him not to, as long as they were there, so they could be with Abigail. Where can you go with the story now? I mean, it's kind of wrapped up, but at the same time, obviously they're not destroying the house, so it's still there, this haunted house. Do we bring more people into the Hill House full, and then, of course, the Cranes have to deal with that? Or is it just a matter of continuing how to see how the Crane family themselves just deal with it? It, like I said, it could be self-contained within itself as a one season good story, but again, this is Netflix. Like in any movie or entertainment franchise, they hope to be able to more money, more. And it was, if there's another season, another story that can be as well done, if not better than this, sign me up for it, because it really was something to watch. Interesting. I mean, it's actually a series that I'm like, I may have to go back and watch, if not certain episodes, watch the whole thing again, because it was just. I have a feeling it's one of those things where now seeing the whole thing that may be able to pick up more things, as to. Anyways, that is my ramble, my very meandering ramble review of the Haunting of Hill House, with spoilers. So, if you have seen it already, let me know what your thoughts are on it. And if you haven't, if you're interested in watching it, as always, feel free to share, subscribe, hopefully give a like, um, and like I said, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you thought if you watched it, what you thought of this video, or if you go and watch it after this, come back, leave a comment, let me know what you thought about it. As always, appreciate it. Thanks for watching.